just get rid of him and move on. The logic is so maybe he'll realize the seriousness of his behavior and change. But he'll never realize the seriousness of his behavior if we don't tell him about the seriousness of his behavior. So we're going to do that. We're going to be honest about that in hopes that this person will change his behavior. If he does, that's great. His spirit can be saved in the day of the Lord Jesus. And that's what we're after. That's the goal. That's always the goal. If he won't change, go on down to the end of the section in verse 13. Remove the wicked man from yourself, a quotation from Deuteronomy chapter 13. One of the hardest things the local church will ever do, I promise you. And it's not, we've made this point before, it's not done by the elders. It's not that the elders have withdrawn from somebody. The church does that. It's one of the hardest things the church will ever do. But it is also one of the most valuable things because, first of all, it reaffirms the commitment to the church family. We are all in this together. We've joined ourselves together voluntarily. We're in this together. And we're going to protect that arrangement while we try to save, best we can, every single individual. It's one of the hardest things we can do, but it is also one of the most valuable things we can do, and it's one of the most spiritual things we can do. Because what we do in that moment is we put spiritual life above every other thing. We put what's best for somebody's spiritual soul above everything else. Even the other things that we value so much. The personal relationships, the friendships, the camaraderie, the just being together, the having a meal together, all of that. We put spiritual above everything else when we do this. It's important. And in that moment also it illustrates that as it relates to the local church family, you are not your own. You're not your own. We all belong to each other. And so we have to live that way and be thankful for that. So 3 ways in which we're not our own, just generally as it relates to God and how we conduct ourselves and how we use our bodies. It gets to more than just spirit and sexual immorality. It gets to drugs and alcohol. It gets to everything. How we use our bodies. God cares, and you're not your own. If you're married, you're not your own there either. You're especially not your own in that relationship. You surrender yourself to your spouse. If you're having trouble with that, work on that. Pray about that. Struggle with that, but solve that problem. Because verse 5 of chapter 7 says if you're doing it wrong, stop doing it wrong. And then thirdly, you're not your own as it relates to the local fellowship. You're joined to these people, and you have to operate that way. I will leave you this morning with a passage from the Apostle Paul in Galatians chapter 2. Galatians chapter 2 and verse 20. I know you probably know that. Some of you do by heart. But you're welcome to turn over there and read it with me. Galatians chapter 2 and verse 20, the Apostle Paul says this. I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself up for me. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. I've been crucified with Christ. It's that concept we talked about on the first point, that we chose to become Christians. We were washed, we were cleansed, we were sanctified. We chose that. Because we chose that now, I live a different life. Don't ever look at that and say, poor me, I have all these obligations and I can't live for myself. Look at that and say, what a tremendous opportunity I have laid out before me to offer myself to God, my family, and my church as I pursue eternity with God, my family, and my church. What a blessed opportunity it is. I've been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life that I now live, he says, in the body, that we were talking about in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, the life that I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself up for me. That's where we are as Christians. That's right where we want to be as Christians. If you need to make some adjustments in your life, let's do that. If we can help you at all, you let us know while we stand to sing.